You mentioned one of your duties is involving scheduling. How does that what is your idea of a great schedule? How does that come together? The scheduling aspect of it for teams.
Well, I tell you, before I got here, I used to have to do the scheduling by myself and by hand, and
Okay.
that was a challenge.
Hmm.
But now we have a young man that does it, and he does most of the conferences in Division One. But we come up with the parameters that we want to look at, whether it's no game, nobody plays two games in a row on the road or at home to start or end the season, so nobody gets those kind of advantages. So those kind of things go into the mix. He plugs them into the computer, and then it spits out a schedule for us. And then from there, what we do is look at the schedule to make sure nobody's playing more than three games in a row, one way or the other, on the road or at home, or anything like that. And then we send it off to ESPN, and then the ESPN looks at their platforms and places them on TV where those games will be at, and then we go back to the schedule and look at it and make sure again once they've finished their part that there's no discrepancy with the criteria. And then from there, we send it out to the coaches and let them go with it. The coaches have no say so in it. They have some complaints about it, but they have
Okay.
no say so in it. And it's worked out pretty good.
Now,
This coming year, we'll go with we one twist we'll have going into this year, adding the four teams. Well, obviously be at 14 teams. Normally we've played a 18 game schedule, double round robin. Everybody
mhm,
plays each other. This coming year, it'll be a team will play five teams twice and eight teams once to get to
mhm.
the 18 games. So we're still working on the schedule for next year. Just started. We want to wait till the end of the season so that we can figure out the data from the four teams coming in to add it to the existing teams, and then we'll determine who the five teams are that everybody will play twice, and then figure out who those teams are that you'll play once.
In regarding parameters, do you have does the conference encourage the coaches to play X amount of power conference teams or don't play this many lower major teams, anything like that in calculations?
We've been very, very fortunate in the last 5 or 6 years of having the strongest conference in the nation as far
Mm.
as strength of schedule. So we don't really haven't really had to say, hey, you can't play this team or you can play this team. I know some of our teams that are top ranked teams play some lower teams in the preseason, but our conference is so tough. I mean, when
Mhm.
you look at this year and last year, the majority of our conference games were tier one games and
Mhm.
in the net. And so if you're playing everybody's playing tier one games, then you can play whoever you want to on those non-conference games almost and still be in pretty good shape. But our guys, they play a tough schedule anyway. They don't shy away from it. Kansas has the strongest schedule of anybody, and they don't shy away. They play, Duke, and they play Kentucky, and they play different schools. Gonzaga played Texas last year and played Baylor, and so we go after the top teams as well. But we'll play some schools in other conferences throughout the year, or preseason. But for the most part, there's only one or two games, and then the rest of them are pretty top-notch games.
Are you involved in the conference matchups, for example, like the Big 12 versus the Big East? Are you involved in that?
Yeah. Yeah, we sit down with the Big East. In fact, we started earlier this year. We wanted to get it done early, and what we do is we send out to each of our schools, and say,
Mhm.
hey, what's your available? That we give them the parameters of what the week time frame that we're going to play those games in. What's your availability during that time? And then we look at both. We've already had predetermined who's on the road and who's not on the road, and so then with this year coming up, the Big East has 11 teams. We have 14, so three of our teams will have to sit out. So because of the additions, we only took Houston into the mix, and then we left the 10 existing teams in it.
Mhm.
So BYU, Cincinnati, and Central Florida will not play in it this year. But obviously, we go to 12 next year. Some of those teams may fit in there. But then we take the schedules. We both overlap our schedules as to availability, and then we see who matches up. And uh, this year, just so happened that we had Kansas and UConn matched up, which we look like scheduling geniuses, but we didn't do anything special. It just fell out that way. Marquette, Texas going to Marquette. I mean, where Shock is there. I mean,
Right.
that just happened. It did not. I know Texas fans probably think we try to stick it to them, but that's not what happened. It just fell out that way. So, it's been that way for, I guess this is the fifth year. I think they've done the Big East Challenge, and the Big East has been a battle for us.
Mm-hmm.
We've been the first year they got us pretty good before I got here, and then since then it's been pretty even. And so I think last year we won it by one game or two games, but it's a great matchup for us, a challenge for us. It gives us an opportunity to play against a top-notch opponent, Power Five opponent. Sits well with the NCAA committee when they're looking at selection processes and see that we're playing top-notch teams in quad one games, and for the most part, I think all of them were quad one except for a couple of quad two games. But that helps us as far as when it comes down to selections as well.